My heart had stopped. I heard 10 minutes from the doctors in the hospital that I was dead. He went to the door, started screaming out the door, "She's not breathing, she's down." I saw this huge black ball of energy rolling towards me. It was huge, and it was like it was alive. And told lies about where our heart is. It was like a web or a ring of interwoven energies and people. The black ball that I saw rolling in, he goes, "That is death." That's how the monks practice, is they call in death and then want to get it coming toward us and let it move by. With that, just hit me in the back. If you stay conscious through all of it, you get to, I was raised in Texas and Colorado. My mother was a narcissist. She passed away during COVID, I want to say in 2020, maybe 2021. I don't know, my upbringing, I was brought up in a Christian family. My granddad was a preacher, so it was kind of, hit over the head with the Bible enough times that you just did whatever you were told, kind of thing. My dad worked all the time. I had 3 brothers. We kind of protected each other and did what we could around each other. I found out later in life how much my upbringing had to do with the trials I went through raising my own kids. The depressions, the anxieties, my overweight issues. I was 300 pounds at one point, and had to go through getting all that on. That was when I related it back to my childhood, I was able to fully understand who I was and why I ended up, what had caused me to be what I thought I was.
A lot of interesting things there. Definitely want to get back to talking about narcissism and how do we deal when somebody in our family has narcissistic tendencies, because I think that's definitely helpful for everybody. But before we dive a bit deeper, tell me what happened a few months ago.
So December 2nd of 2023, so right at the end of last year, I'm an asthmatic, so that's another whole life. I was told by my mother that I was born having an asthma attack, which I found out later wasn't true. So it was just part of her weirdness and her control issues, but had asthma my whole life regardless. So I had to deal with that. And I got up on the morning of December 2nd, probably around 4:30 or 5:30, and it was usual, having a little bit of trouble breathing. So I go in our living room and I have my nebulizer that I use, and I always have it loaded so I can just go in and use it real quick. And I did what I normally do, and it got worse. I went into the bedroom and grabbed my husband's feet and kind of shook him. I was like, I think I'm in trouble. And I must have kept talking to him. And this is where I don't remember anything. He said I told him I needed more medicine, so he got up and got more medicine, but he already realized I was in more trouble than I thought I was. Grabbed his phone, dialed 911, got somebody coming over this way. And he said I wasn't talking. I was very choppy, like I had to stop and take a little in order to get the next words out. They showed up, the paramedics showed up. So my understanding was it was 5 female paramedics in an ambulance, and not realizing the severity of the situation. One came inside, the rest stayed back, getting out the gurney and all the stuff that they were bringing in the house, oxygen tanks. And they were coming, from their point of view, they were coming to an asthma attack. So that was what they were working on bringing in. But I've actually spoken to her since. She came in the house and she said she looked at me and we locked eyes, and she was like, "Oh, we're in real trouble." She could tell just by looking in my face. And so she turned around and ran back out and started redirecting people. My husband at that point, I guess he had walked out, walked back in. I was down. He went to the door, started screaming out the door, "She's not breathing, she's down." The lady came running back in, the paramedic came running back in, and it was like, "Oh no, this is a cardiac arrest." It went from how I thought I was having trouble breathing to I could not see this coming to save my life. I had no idea how fast this was going to turn. And they didn't either. They were pretty well shocked. They couldn't get the gurney up our stairs in front of the house. They couldn't get some of the equipment back in the house because it was snowing out. There was I don't know how deep it was in snow, but they couldn't get through it. And the gurney itself the story I heard already weighs 200 pounds, and then you add a 170-pound person on top of it who was dead weight at that point. Literally, they were struggling, and my husband was starting to get a little bit upset. But in the meantime, somebody had thought enough to call the fire truck guys. And so we had everybody over here. We're a tiny town, and it's all volunteer. So they all came running in. My heart had stopped. I think I was probably going in between 5 and 10 minutes at that point. So no oxygen, no blood circulation, no heartbeat. I, of course, didn't know what was going on. So it was, my body's just laying there. What I saw was myself standing there looking out our front door, which faces to the south. And I don't know why the directions are important, but they still seem to be important. And I saw this huge black ball of energy rolling towards me. It was huge, and it was like it was alive. And since I started talking about that, I've had a lot of people saying, oh yeah, I've seen that too. And we're all just like, I don't know what it is. But it came towards the house, went around the house, and it was like I was above the house watching everything. So I saw it move, go around the house, came back in through the back of the house, so from the north, and it just hit me in the back, took me down. And I had been talking a lot about just calling in all of my karma at once. Just bring it. Like, let's just do this thing. And I kind of think that's part of what happened. That's part of what that was. I have found out since exactly what that was, and we can talk about that a little bit more later if you want to. But they got me on the gurney, finally got me in an ambulance, got me the closest hospital's like 35 minutes from here, maybe 40 minutes on a good day. It was snowing out, so it took longer. By the time they got me in the hospital, they were already hooking me up to whatever the brain scan thingy's called, because they didn't know what was left, if anything. So I was hooked up to everything you could possibly be. What they brought me back with is called a Lucas machine, a Lucas device. So they strapped that on me, and basically what it is some kind of device, has a suction cup in the center of it. They put that right in the center of your chest over your heart, and it just goes 120 beats a minute. So it's not the electronic paddles; those don't work when you're already dead. Apparently, it's not a good answer. So I had that on me for quite a while, and anywhere from, I heard 10 minutes from the doctors in the hospital that I was dead, to the fire chief, who said no, it was a lot longer than that. It's like, I don't want to know what that means. So all my rib cage is just a mess still. That's the biggest problem I'm having. No brain damage, no heart muscle damage. All of my lower organs were in renal failure, which is typical, I guess, if you don't have blood flow or oxygenation. So everything basically just started failing. I was in a coma for 3 days. They let me wake up out of that finally. So it was an induced coma. And during that, I saw, I don't even know how really to describe it, except that it was like a web or a ring of interwoven energies and people who were all praying over me and doing energy work. I have a lot of friends that are energy healers. All of them were doing their jobs and doing, whatever they thought they needed to do. It was amazing to watch. But I was watching from a place of this like dark, silent, totally peaceful, absolutely beautiful. It was amazing. It was amazing to watch. I knew some of the beings that were around me. I knew there was family members that I could feel, and I knew who they were. There was beings that felt familiar, but I couldn't put my finger on them. I couldn't tell you who they were necessarily. And then there was beings that were otherworldly. I don't know how to call them. I didn't know who they were. I could feel the power and energy coming off of them. And it was just like they were part of the support system. They were just there to support everything that was happening. So another 3 days in the hospital, and I had a doctor walk into the room. I was in the cardiac. I went from ICU to the cardiac ward. And he walked in after 3 days, and he goes, honestly, you can go home if you want to. There's no reason for you to be here. And I was just like, you're talking to the wrong person. I'm pretty sure. Like, you want to check the chart again? And he goes, no. He showed me. He goes, you have no brain damage. There's no heart damage. We're not like whatever they track in your blood work. He goes, it's looking pretty good. He goes, your biggest restriction is going to be your pain from your rib cage. He goes, and there's no broken bones. We can't find any broken bones. So it's all cartilage damage and bruising. So soft tissue damage, which is worse than, like, if the bones had broken, you would have been better off. So the soft tissue damage apparently takes longer to heal. The cartilage damage takes a lot longer to heal. But we're healing it really fast with the help of all the guides and the team members and and my friends that do energy work. Everything. I'm not even 2 months out yet, and the doctors are just shocked how fast all this is moving.
Oh, that's impressive. Do you mind sharing a bit more? Because I think this can be helpful. What kind of energy work and therapies are you doing to recover?
I am very fortunate. I am very fortunate. I've been doing this healing journey of my own for a long time because of the 300 pounds and all the illnesses that went along with that. So I've been on this journey a long time. I practice myself heart coherence, breathing techniques, which has changed radically since this happened. The breathing techniques have definitely changed. Meditation, right? All the things. Heart coherence by itself will cause a resilience inside your system that will change the way you heal. Right? It just does by nature of what it is. And we can explain that more later too, if you want to. But the friends that I have around me are everyone from just people who send love and, every time they think about you, they're just sending love and keeping you in their prayers in their mind kind of idea, to people who douse and literally use dowsing charts that are kind of crazy. I can show you that again if you want to see it. It's pretty intense. But I had people using, whatever techniques. I had one lady, my son called, that he's seen for a long time because he had some issues coming up that he needed help with. And she does something called brain integration technique that's absolutely fascinating. And he messaged her within 4 hours of my crash, and she immediately started running brain integration patterns on me. And I tell this to a doctor, right? And I'm just like, they're like, whatever. And I'm like, you cannot tell me that didn't, because you're standing here looking at me going, why don't you have brain damage? I'm going to point at them and go, because they were doing their work. They were doing what they do. And the effect was, obviously insane. The effect was incredible. So I had a lot of that stuff going on. When I went to the firehouse and talked to the fire chief, probably 2 weeks after I got home from the hospital, and I walked in and he just kind of looked at me and he was like, and I said, my name's Christy. And he goes, Hound Street. And I was like, yes, Hound Street, because that's where I live. And that's how he knew me. He goes, we didn't know if you had lived or died. He's like, oh, I had no idea. And I was like, yeah. I said, and I'm fine. Like, the only restriction is the rib pain. You guys did an amazing job. I would love to meet your team and just hug everybody and say thank you. And he just started crying. I was like, oh, no, like, you're going to make me cry. And he said, I've prayed for you every day, because he goes, we've never seen that before. It happened so fast. We just didn't know. Like, nobody was prepared. Nobody was prepared. And I was like, well, I would say you were really prepared, because you did what you needed to, and everybody who surrounded me. And obviously your prayers worked, because here I am. And I saw him in that web. I saw him in that ring. I just didn't know who he was. And everybody that was in that circle of love, I just can't even. And I can go back there. I can shut my eyes and just be right back there again. It's so incredible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's never left.
And how do you feel like when you go back there, or when you were in this circle of love? What kind of energies were you picking up on? What kind of feelings did you have?
Mostly just peace. And I'm going to say, I guess, love. It was just so peaceful. And probably awe. I was just in awe for being able to sit there and watch it. It was just incredible. The amount of energy in that place was just incredible. I don't know how to describe it. I remember waking up. I want to say it was probably really recent after I came out of the coma. And it was like I was watching from another room. And then I started waking up, but I could still see the other room. I could see the other place. And I closed my eyes and I would just be immediately back there. And I was like, whoa. And I said something to one of the, probably a nurse or somebody who was in the room. And she's like, oh, that's just the drugs talk. And I'm like, okay, maybe some of it. I'll buy that. But I can still close my eyes and it's still there. So I'm like, okay, that's not the drugs talking anymore. That's not that, because I'm not taking any of that stuff. So yeah.
And how did you know? Because I think often enough when people have near-death experiences, unless they've seen or heard of people before and know of other stories, often enough, you have something, but you have no idea how to call it or what it is. So were you aware that near-death experiences exist, or was it something that you started looking into after this happened to you?
No, I've heard of them before. My dad's had a few near-death experiences, but his would be true near-death experiences. He came near death, but he did not die. So I'm in a little bit of odds with the way people call this, because I did die. And even he was like, there's a difference. He goes, I was floating up above my body and watching, but I wasn't out of here. He goes, it sounds like you were out of here. And he's done that a number of times where he's come near death, but he was still, his heart was still beating. So I would say there's got to be a different terminology if you've actually died and then come back, however your comeback happened. Were you sent back? Did you get drawn back? Did you come back of your own will? Whatever, however that works. But I think there's a difference between a near-death experience. Like a bus could almost hit you and you could say that was a near-death experience, right? Yeah. And if you've actually died, and I actually had somebody email me and he said his, he called it a supposed MDE. I think he was out of the UK, happened 44 years ago. And he's been fighting the terminology ever since. He's like, that was not a near death experience. That was a death and a resurrection. And I was like, oh my.
It's starting to get quite complex, I think, with the denomination. But I do think it's a good thing, right? Because there's people, well, not just nowadays, but for the past years, also looking into the science of it and trying to give explanation, make more sense of it. So I think the moment, research goes into it and we start having those discussions, like that's only good, I think, for making it more popular to everybody. And that helps people know what they've been through. And it also helps them connect with people that have been through similar experiences, which in turn helps you, I think, move on and make sense of it and explain it, right?
I think so. And I think based on your perception in life, it will change your perception in death, right? We've heard that before for sure. So depending on, your belief systems, your religious belief or spiritual belief or zero belief, whatever you have, it kind of guides your journey, I think, through part of that. I've been doing this for a long time and I've been everywhere from the religious end of Christian, born again kind of Christian stuff to, hey, wait a minute, like something's not right with this, and move totally out of that realm into more spiritual spaces. And then, going deeper and deeper. I work with a gentleman, a monk called Grandmaster Wolf, and you can look him up. I've actually posted one of my sessions on my YouTube channel. You can look that up and watch it. And he's guided me through a lot of different things that just changed the way I think about everything. I try not to believe anything because it just throws you, back into the matrix when you start believing things. So I try and take away the belief system. I try and just not label things and not, I just watch and observe kind of idea. But he told me the other day, yesterday morning, actually, we got on a call and I was telling him what I saw. He didn't know any of this had happened until yesterday. And he was like, do what? He's like, good practice. He goes, that's how we practice. That's how the monks practice, is they call in death and then have a near-death experience and then learn how to stay awake through it. So that's what I've been practicing until this happened, was how do I go to sleep at night, get my body totally relaxed and asleep, but stay conscious, right? It's part of the practice. So in practicing that, I think that's how some of what happened. I didn't hear the voice of God. I didn't see a light in a tunnel. I didn't, get a review. Some people talk about getting a review. I didn't see any of that stuff. I was just able to sit and watch. And it was like you could see everything. No matter where I looked, I could see wherever I was looking to. But Grandmaster told me yesterday, the black ball that I saw rolling in, he goes, that is death. He goes, I can tell you exactly. He goes, we've seen that so many times. It's what we practice. We want to get it coming toward us and let it move by without, it's the fear that causes you to faint when you die. And that's what he said to me. And I was like, that's an interesting way to put that. He goes, if you faint, you lose your option to make choices. If you stay conscious through all of it, you get to make choices. And there's 3 different choices. He goes, because it went around you, that would tell me that you weren't supposed to go, that you probably did somehow call this in. You probably talked enough about it that you were able to bring it in. And whatever happened physically to your body, you were totally protected because you weren't meant to lose anything through it. You were meant to gain. I was like, all right, I will receive that.
And you mentioned there were like 3 things about the ball, or
there are 3 choices you can make.
Oh, 3 choices, yeah.
According to him,
yeah.
And his understanding. And one of them is to come back here. The light in the tunnel is coming back into this realm. He says, if you see the light, it's basically the tunnel is the birth canal, and the light's coming back into this realm. So you're seeing the light coming back into this space. One of the choices is to just stay and observe, which means you would stay in this realm, but not in your physical body. So it would be what some might consider ghosts, when you have something in your house or in your space that it's not totally tangible, like you could grab it and hold on to it, but you can feel it and something's there. And the other option, according to him, would be move on into a higher realm or into the Akashic realm, where you would actually be given instruction on how to help in this realm. So he used the example of Einstein and him coming up with the formula, whatever the formula was he came up with. And, maybe he got part of it, but it just wasn't all coming together. And then there was a being in that realm going, oh, here, let me help you, and would put the thought through so that, right, we call it downloads, or we call it getting messages kind of idea.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting.
And you have been into spirituality for quite a while now.
I have been, my whole life, I guess, in this lifetime, in some degree or another, because spiritual ideas or whatever that you get from the Christian idea, from the Christian walk, some of those don't leave you. There's good in the mix of all of it. So if you can find the good that's in the book and all the books that we didn't get, if you can find, there's some really good stuff in there that you have to be able to discern, what was man written and what was actually something that was given, that helps us and moves us on our journeys.
And I was going to ask you if why you think this happened, but I think that's exactly what we were talking about earlier, right? That you somehow called it in and you weren't meant to go, but because you were asking the right questions, you were diving deep within yourself, that you actually got to have this experience. Now, looking back, and I will say this again, it hasn't been a long time that this happened to you, but looking back, do you think anything has changed in your life outside of, recovering and getting your health back on track? Has that brought any new insights for you?
Oh my gosh, yes. So many new insights. I have done this quite a while, and I teach heart coherence, and I've taught for a long time. I'm a teacher of spiritual things. I stepped away from it for a while because COVID got weird and I had to take care of my dad, and all kinds of stuff happened. So I stepped away from it. So I think this was literally a push back into it. I was shown the rainbow, which I've seen before. And the idea, if you look at a chakra chart and you've got red, orange, yellow, right? And the start colors, it's just a dot of red, the color red, orange, yellow, green, all the way up the system. What I saw, and I saw again, and it was like they were throwing it in my face, like, seriously, come on, pay attention this time. It's like, okay. It's not the color red, it's every color red. So if you look at your root chakra and you're in a nice deep meditation and you just go observe, you'll start to notice the color red is a lot of different hues. And there's hues that our physical eyes can see, which means our imaginations can imagine them. There's hues we can't see, right? We only see a very small spectrum actually of what's out there. And so there's the seen and the unseen, even in the color world. And when I saw this before, it was literally a rainbow in the sky over Park City. And I had to pull off the road because I was just like, holy cow, I thought something was like going wrong. It's like, what is happening? But I could see all these hues of red in that little band of red that was in that rainbow. And they were so bright. Some of them were alive, like they were moving. It wasn't a stagnant. I mean, I can't really fully explain it. But what I understood was that idea of the spectrums of color are what make up the system. It's not just red, orange, yellow, it's every hue of every color. And then you have to understand, and I started to hear it because I was sitting there paying so much attention to it, that every color has a tone, has a tonal quality in the frequency makeup of all of these colors. There's tones. Then you start stacking the colors and the quality of the colors, the energy of the colors, and then you start hearing the tones and stacking all of those tones. Once you get up to violet, once you get up here towards your crown chakra, the sound is what they called an overtone. And to me, all I could say was it just sounds like the angels singing. I just, again, can't fully explain it, but it was just amazing. And when I go through my system, or people who are trying to open their chakras and they're like, oh, my throat chakra is always a main inhibitor. If you see it as it's all these hues and the energy's alive and moving, you realize it can never get stuck, right? You were taught that. That's a learned part of the program, that there's going to get energy is going to get stuck and you're going to have an issue. Then you start to realize that, and I know that kind of changes everything. So that was one of the things that came back full circle. There was a few of those. One of the other things I've noticed going into this, I've never known joy. If you're brought up under narcissism, you're not taught how to be happy. You don't see happy. People in your family, just everybody's always ducking and covering. So we didn't really see a lot of happiness, but all of a sudden I know happiness on a level I've never known it. Happiness and joy. I feel like a 5-year-old is what I told my husband the other day. I'm like walking around, I'm either crying or I'm giggling. There's only one or the other. I have no control of it. It just happens. And I'm like, okay, we're just going to let it roll. So that's been a huge part of it. I told GM Grandmaster Wolf the other day, I just feel empty. And I've told that to a few people. I have a lot of friends in the psychiatry world also. And one of my friends is a forensic psychiatrist. And I told her that I just feel empty. And she was like, oh no, you need to see someone. I tell Grandmaster Wolf that. And he's like, yes, you bet you. I mean, it feels good. I think if you can end karma, which he said that's probably what happens, because you have to realize karma doesn't follow you out of here. That's a here thing. That's another part of the program that we get caught up in. And it's just gone. And I have the 5-year-old left.
So then you feeling empty is being empty of actions of your past or decisions, or is it emotions or things that you've been perhaps bottling up?
Yes, all of that.
All of them. Wow.
Yeah, it's like the trauma that you hold on to because it makes who you are.
Yeah.
That's gone. And I've been working on those for years, and some of it now is just like, I mean, I can remember it, but now there's no emotional attachment to it. So there's the thing that happened, and then it's emotional attachment, and you take the emotional attachment off it, you have your memories, but now I have no issue with it. And I've actually noticed it affecting other people around me who, like one of my brothers who went through the same trauma, and however it's affecting him, we don't talk normally. Our family is really separated. He called me the other day and he was like, I just have to tell you how much I love you. Like, you have to know. And I was like, yeah, I know. I totally know. And he just went on and on about, we were taught wrong. And like, he just finally figured some of it out. I was blown away. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. So his understanding changed for whatever reason. I don't really know, but his understanding changed too.
I love that. And I think the way I see it is, I think it's also because of all the work that you've been doing, right, to release the traumas. Like you've been doing the work and then you've had this event happen that just emptied it, in your words.
Yeah.
But I think it's also thanks to all of the work that you've been doing up until now.
Well, so and my question would be then, would it have happened anyway if I hadn't have been doing work, right? If I'm just aware and I'm conscious, but I'm like, one of the things I've understood, and I've kind of understood this before, but not to this level, is that we go to all of this work to release something or get rid of something. And if you fully understand the energy of creation and the energy of light, to have to keep getting rid of things makes no sense. If I get myself coherent, if I get myself in that light, right? And my coherence would mean that my brain, my heart, and my gut are all in alignment with, let's say, love or joy or peace. And I stay in that alignment, I remain there. That other stuff can't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally physically impossible. That's where the emotional attachments come off. Does that make sense? So if I'm like going around and continually trying, this is what they really made me understand, or what the event really made me understand. If I'm continually going around, and I'm guilty of this too, I preached it all the time. I help people do it, not anymore, but I go back through my old videos on YouTube, and I have all kinds of stuff about this. If you understand that you're staying in that light, and then that's your full projection, that other stuff can't be there. If I continually try to get rid of it over and over and over, what am I really doing? I'm focusing on it. I'm calling more of it back into me. I'm actually creating neuroplastic. I'm reseeding it in the system. So then every time something like it comes up or it gets mirrored to me, I go straight back into my old pattern, right? So I say, quit trying to get rid of stuff. Work harder on remaining in your light or remaining your true self.
I love that. And as someone who is very, very emotional, I'm a highly sensitive person, which means that I just feel very intensely. I feel very intensely when it's good things. I feel very intensely when it's not good things. So there's a price and there's a downside for sure. You're saying, and I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it, that if we are in the light, if we are actually in those higher vibrations of kindness, of love, of gratitude, then we don't actually keep the things, the bad emotions and negative experiences with us, right? We just detach from them easily.
Yes. And physically, physiology wise, it can't happen. I can't be in anger and be joyful at the same time. It's physically impossible because the chemicals don't work that way, right? The neurochemicals in the system won't allow you to do both. And you actually get a choice. It's something as humans, we can choose our emotional state. But when you get an emotional reaction to something that's what we would consider negative, the chemical construction of it always mirrors, that's the yin and yang, right? It always mirrors something on the good side too. It's your perception of it. So if you become aware of your perception, oh, this was anger. Well, what if it was just, something that happened, but it's kind of amusing, right? There's an edge of amusement to it. Same chemicals,
Mm-hmm.
right? That kind of thing goes on. So there's a lot of perception going on. One of the bigger things that I keep coming back to, because it got blown up, a lot of stuff that I've seen before, I've been told before through my guides and my higher self, I've understood before, but again, this just got blown up really huge, is that when you understand your true self, when you are in your inner self, your inner nature, your higher self, whatever, your God self, whatever you call it, I call it spirit, it's my spirit. And I truly engage from that place, you will begin to understand that what we're calling peace, and that kind of peace, the peace that passes all understanding, right? Let's use that term for it. It's two different things. You don't have to do anything to get this peace. You don't have to create it. You don't have to start a war to find it. You don't have to ask somebody for it. It's part of the nature of your spirit self. It just is, right? So if I'm engaging with that part of me instead of engaging in the program or in my brain, that's just who I am. Joy is the same way, right? I realized I always say I wasn't taught joy. I am joy. Took a long time to figure that one out. I am joy because my spirit, that's one of its innate parts of its being, is joy, right? Love is the same thing. The love, the way we're taught it and what we think love is not the nature of love from the spirit. There's so much more to it. From its creative nature all the way down to just the embrace of, right, of another human or another being that's truly from that space. But you are love. You don't create love. You don't get love. You don't make love. You don't cause love. Somebody doesn't have to do something for you or to you to give you love. You are love. It emanates from you. Peace emanates from you. Joy emanates from you. Gratitude, same thing. You don't have to do anything to get gratitude, to cause gratitude, to find gratitude. You are gratitude if you're here, right? If you're in that deep space within you.
I love that. So if we are to bring this into something like a useful frame that people struggling with depression, anxiety could use, what would be the steps that they would need to take to get a slightly better vibration, to move a bit upwards on that scale?
I would say learn how to breathe. Breath is huge.
Good one. Yeah.
Learn how to breathe because it'll calm your system down. And if you practice a style of breathing, it'll calm down your autonomic nervous system, which would be like 4 counts in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 6 or 7 counts out. So you're exhaling longer than you're inhaling. It calms your heart down. It slows your heart rhythm. You could literally put on a monitor to monitor your heart rate and breathe like that for a minute and watch your heart rate fall. It'll just start slowing down. If you're breathing super shallow, like for a long period of time, and even just like 1, 2 in, 1, 2 out, 1, 2 in, 1, 2 out, it'll energize your body at first. It'll raise your heart rate. So, right, people start anxiety attacks. If you remain there too long, that's where the anxiety attacks happen. That's where the depression, because you're oxygen deprived at that point, right? But you can use it to work inside your body. If I need energy, I will breathe like that for a couple of minutes just to amplify energy inside my system. And then I'll go back to a natural rhythm or a natural flow to my breath. If I need to calm the system down, I do the other breathing where it's 4 in and 6 or 7 out, right? Calm the system right down. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basic gist of it. With the breathing, I would learn, especially if you're in a depressed state or you're having a lot of anxiety, the breathing first, and then I would learn heart coherence. I would learn how to do a couple of breaths and then put my hands over my heart and go straight inside your heart and just sit there. Not the outside of your heart, not inside your chest cavity, but inside of your heart. There is a place where you will meet your spirit. There is a place where some of the ancient texts call it the secret space of the Most High. In that space, and I always said, is where your spirit resides, but that space is your spirit. The more intimately you get to know that space and you can be there, the more control you have over your physical shell, and including depression. I mean, you can't be depressed if your spirit is emanating peace and joy. You just can't, right? I was diagnosed years ago with bipolar disorder and put on drugs that were part of my weight issue was caused by those drugs. It was horrifying. And nobody ever thought to ask, and you would think psychiatrists would always ask questions like this, but what happened, in your past? What was your childhood? And there was none of that stuff. It was just like, oh, here's the symptoms you come in presenting. Here's the medication we're going to put on it. They never asked what was happening in my house. So all of the stuff with my son, he had brain issues he had a heart issue when he was tiny. It was just this ongoing rolling constant issue and roller coaster. Oh my gosh, it was a roller coaster. And it looked like bipolar kind of from a psychological standpoint, the ups and downs. I'm like, it's just life. Like, help me learn how to handle life. They medicated it instead and made it worse. And then I got really mad one day, my religious background, screaming at Jesus, like, what the heck? Like, if you can heal this crap, why am I still fighting with all of this? And that's when I heard, go into your heart. You're participating everywhere but here, where I said, heaven is inside you, go here. Go here. I was like, oh. And I started trying to do that, and then I found it. And I was like, that was it. That was, if I was making a mistake, that was a mistake. I was so hard participating in the outer world and participating in my brain, trying to figure stuff out. Yeah, there's nothing to figure out. Just go here.
I love that. And I think especially with a lot of mental disorders, I think nowadays we're so quick to just throw pills and meds at it. And I know from a few people with depression as well, it's I perhaps there's people that are being helped by it, and I'm sure that they do good, but in the cases that I've seen, it's actually not very helpful. So you do have to ultimately, as you did, find other tools that are able to help you. And that's where I wanted to get a bit more into, because you've mentioned heart coherence, which I didn't know of before. And also you've mentioned brain integration. So I wanted to know a bit more about these therapies, what they are, how do we do them, and what's the best way for somebody that has no prior knowledge of can they find out more? Do they need a practitioner? Is this something that they can do themselves?
So brain integration is a huge process. I have a friend that I've known for years, and the reason she learned brain integration was because of my son, who was having so many problems. We have kids that were all the same age, and she started learning brain integration because of my family. Bless her heart. And she's the one that did brain integration on me when my son called her and was like, okay, mom's down. She's probably not going to live through this. And she immediately started doing her work. You could probably learn some of how to do that, but I can give you her website and you can post it wherever so people can go look at it. You would probably have to have a practitioner for that one. And just, I know she's here in the States, she lives in Colorado, but I am sure she would figure out some way to help and work with people. On the heart coherence end of it, super easy. If you want me to walk you through it, I can walk you through it real quick.
Yeah, are we doing it now?
Yeah, we can do it now. I do teach heart coherence, and then I help people. So if they're having a super huge issue, sometimes it's good to have somebody standing there pointing things out to you, because you might not see it. Otherwise, the practice is literally do what we're about to do. And people will say, just do it daily. I took it a little bit further than that. And I said, because it's a 3-minute practice that we're going to do. If you did this 3-minute practice every hour for however long you're awake during the day, right? It might total 30 minutes at the end of the day. But because you've done it every hour, you keep bringing your system back to it. You're paying more attention to it throughout the day than if you only did it one time during the day, right? So it has a little bit different of effect doing it that way. It is a little bit of a meditative process, and people get all squirrely. I can't meditate. I can't do that. Quit telling yourself that, first of all, because that's part of the program. And every time you say it, you're creating more neural links to that. So just quit saying that. Don't say anything if you have to say that. If you can say, no, I can do this, you're going to be great. It's going to be totally easy for you. And just continue to do it. Find the feeling. We're going to get you there. Find the feeling and then just remain in it. That's the key to it. It will start to take stuff apart by itself. But if you need help, I'll give you my links and they can contact me. So how you do this, the first 3 parts of it are breath. Inhaling and exhaling. It's that big inhale, 4 count, long exhale. If you are anxious or depressed, you're going to have a hard time breathing. You just are. Don't beat yourself up over it. If it's 2 in and 4 out, that's fine. Do what you can do. So know that going into it. So we're going to take that first inhale, nice big inhale. As you inhale, I want you to feel your pelvic floor drop. Close your eyes if you need to and just feel your pelvic floor drop. Your spine will elongate, so your body will feel like it's getting taller. When the oxygen and energy are all the way to the top of your head, I want you to let it release and just let it flow back through you. So you're just letting the oxygen and energy come back down through your body. At the bottom of that exhale, you're going to inhale again. However you're ready. Let your diaphragm expand, your belly expand, pelvic floor drops, spine elongates. And just feel, just notice when you get to the top of that breath, you start to exhale, nice and long and slow, let it come back down. Your third inhale, as you start to exhale, I want you to bring your hands over your heart space. So one more inhale, bring your hands over your heart space. I want you to realize that we were told lies about where our heart is. Your heart's in the center of your chest. It's right here. Heart is not off to the side. I don't know why, except that you can feel the blood flowing through that vein, center of your chest. Now, as you keep inhaling and exhaling, I want you to draw your awareness to your heart. So most people will keep focusing on their breath. I want you to take your focus off of your breath. Let your body breathe naturally. Draw your awareness into your heart. And as you inhale and exhale, it's as if you're inside your heart this first time through, just looking around. I always tell people, you've got 4 chambers in your heart, and there's tissue that brings those 4 chambers together. Try and locate that space where the tissue comes together. Just notice it, be aware of it. You might feel the blood rushing through your heart. You might actually feel the cells of that tissue. And I want you to move your awareness around, kind of go back from that space. And you're just looking for a place. Some people say it feels a bit like falling into a cave. It's an open space. Some people say it feels like what space might feel like if you walked into space. And when you find it, just keep noticing. Become more and more aware. Keep all of your focus in that space.
I think I'm there.
Yeah. Just stay there. Just keep feeling it. This is where I would tell you to do 3 minutes. And we're just going to sit here for a minute. And I want you to keep feeling it. And no matter what you hear around you, just keep your focus in that space. Keep your awareness there. Inhaling and exhaling. I want you to try to label what you think it is you're feeling. What would you call this feeling?
I think peace. I'm just very calm.
Nice. So stay with that. Keep feeling that. Normally we go a little bit longer, but if you can, I want you to start to recognize this peace as who you are, not something you do. Keep all of your focus on it. If you stayed here for a full 3 minutes, your body, your heart would start to emit a signal back up to your brain that's a 0.1 hertz signal that tells your brain to send chemicals back down through the system that cause healing. If you remain in this peace, you can't be the same person. The more often you come back to this peace, who you are as a person will change. All the labels we use on ourselves, all the things we think we are, This peace supersedes all of that. It supersedes your past, it supersedes your anger. It takes apart neuroplastic. And it's just the practice of doing it, staying in it. Now, I want you to come back to your breath, but don't let this feeling go. Come back to your breath, but don't let the feeling go. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, but again, don't let the feeling go. I want you to remain. Remain in this feeling. How's that feel?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And so the goal is to get up and walk around and remain as your peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. I usually tell people to get up and go walk around and touch things. Go touch a plant, go put your hand in the water, go experience some of the things around you. Yeah.
It felt really centering. And I'm somebody very prone to anxiety, to stress. Like I can easily feel overwhelmed. I can easily get involved in too many things that will lead to that. And ironically, I never knew of this before, but I've always tended, like when I had a need to calm myself or when I would be stressed, like I would always just put my hand like in this area. It was a bit higher, but I'd always go to my chest, and that was calming me down. I have no idea why, but now I realize it's really close. So maybe that's what I was looking for.
I think it was. And I think more than looking for, it's probably what you tapped into, right? Your spirit is always there. Your spirit is always peace, always joy, always love, always gratitude, always. It doesn't change, it doesn't alter. It's very steady. We just don't pay attention to it. You start paying attention to it, or have an anxiety attack, and I just put my hand on my chest, your spirit's automatically like, here, like you came, let's pull this back down. If you train yourself to remain there, you train yourself by doing the activity of the breath and coming back to that place and just sitting in it. Eventually, it will become who you are, right? The act of being stressed out all the time became who you are, became anxiety. Yeah. It's what you practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Now, before we close off, I have to say I'm very fascinated by narcissism and people having somebody in their family with narcissistic tendencies. So I wanted, and I also because I believe it's not very easy to spot in many. We don't speak about it a lot. We don't notice it very easily. We're not really trained, I think, to notice it. So I think it's a very fine line when somebody has narcissistic tendencies for us to realize, oh, there's not something wrong with me. It's actually their thing, and I'm just being pulled into what their trauma response is. So, what I wanted to ask you, if somebody is dealing with somebody in their life that may or may not have narcissistic tendencies, how do you recognize that, first of all? Because there's so many other things that it could be. And what are the best ways to protect yourself?
How to recognize it can be a little bit tough because you can't see the forest through the trees. When you're in it, to you, I mean, that's just your way of life, right? So I was raised by a woman that was narcissistic. I thought that was normal. I thought people were supposed to treat me that way. I don't know how I got so lucky with a husband who wasn't, but I know plenty of women who were in the same boat I was in, who married men who are narcissistic, and they can't get out of it because they don't think like there isn't anything else. If I'm not this, then what am I, right? So if a person is constantly confusing to you, right? I'm going to give you one thing, I'm going to give you a lead into something, and then I'm going to snatch it away. You can't have it. Or the opposite of that. Here, you can have this. This is going to be, we're going to do this with what you get. This is how this is. And then you go to take it, right? It can go either direction. My mother was the queen of confusion. She would tell one person in the house one thing and then somebody else on the same exact topic something else. And she kept all of us at odds against each other. None of us ever knew what was going on in that house. And you would never know that we were necessarily siblings because we weren't raised the same because of what she was doing. And from her trauma, I'm guessing, I have heard that go both ways, that a person can learn narcissism and be that way because of the trauma they've gone through and lack of healing, lack of understanding. I've also heard that it can be an entity, it can be a walk-in, it can be, call it a demonic possession, call it whatever you want. I've heard it both ways. I actually sat in front of my mother one day and tried to call the demons out of her because she would literally go into this voice that it was petrifying when she would talk in that voice. And I was like, that's got to be a demon. Like, you can't be doing that on purpose. And turned out she was. That was how she scared us. And as an adult, I was like, I am not doing this with you anymore. Like, oh my goodness. What I learned was if you don't feed them, they need an emotional response to activate, to thrive, right? It's the emotional responses. They don't care what the emotional response is. Love, gratitude, peace, joy. You can give them all of that you want, but they will also take anger, shock, pain, right? Whatever emotional response they can trigger in you, that's what they thrive on. So, and I had heard this from, I think I had read a book or something about it at one point. And they were saying if you can become the gray stone, what is a gray stone? Devoid of emotion, you cannot feed them. So you practice, and here's how I practice. I would go to my mom's house and she would do her thing. She always had a way to trigger, whatever it was, she had a way to trigger you. And she would set it off, but I would walk in and try to be neutral, try to stay in that place of neutrality. No matter what she did, I was trying to stay neutral. Eventually, her things that she did lost its effect because as I practiced it, and people are like, I can't do that. I can't go in front of whoever the narcissist, I can't go there. It is the best place to practice. Do it like it's fun, but it's almost a game at some point. You're like, okay, I'm trying to trick the system, right? So I'd go in and stand in front of her and she'd do her thing and I would just be the gray rock. And in my head, I'm like, okay, this is so weird because I'm not going to give you a response. That's my whole goal is to not. And I'd walk back out, congratulate myself. I didn't go into the response that I normally would, whatever it was, then walk back in and do it again. And then I would walk back out and be like, wow. And then I would walk back in. And then I learned heart coherence and I would get into my state of peace. And I've used this for many things, including people with eating disorders, like all kinds of stuff. It's in the situation, can you remain as you, right, as your inner peace in the situation. So you have to practice it. So I get coherent first. I get in my heart space. I let that good, peaceful feeling, the calmness flow. I can feel it in my system. I open my eyes. I hold on to it. And then I walk up and I knock on her door, open the door and walk in the room. And I start to panic, right? Because now I'm practicing a new practice. Like, okay, I'll be back in a second. And I walk back out. She thinks I'm a lunatic anyway. It doesn't matter. I walk back out, I get coherent again, and I walk back in. And this time I could remain a little bit longer. She would start her thing. My whole focus was inside my heart. I did not take my awareness out of my heart. And the peace started moving, the energy started moving. And then all of a sudden she got peaceful, right? The energy moves. And I watched her get peaceful and I was like, wow. Because before, when I was just the rock, when I was the neutral rock or the gray rock, she would keep going. And I learned how to stay neutral no matter what she did. But when I got peaceful and I stayed in my peace, she would disengage. And I was like, oh. And even to the point of turning her face towards the wall, she wouldn't even talk to me. I was like, all right. And I would look at my dad and I'd be like, let's go to coffee. But I think, that's the game. That's the practice. I had a lady, she had a huge eating disorder where if she ate, she couldn't eat in front of people, like period. Totally anorexic, losing weight like crazy. It was scary. She was and nobody could help. Nobody that she went to. All the traditional.
Can I just say something really quick? Because oddly enough, you don't know that about me, but I had that. Like eating in front of people, I it was always like I couldn't do it. It was years ago, but yeah, it was a very stressful thing to have to eat socially.
And I was the opposite. I could eat everything. I was bulimic. So I would eat everything and then go purge it. But this lady was, it was scary. She was knocking on death's door. But that was her thing, is I can't eat in front of anybody. Now she's going to lose her job. She can't eat in front of anybody. They called a corporate meeting. She had to go sit at a table inside of a restaurant. It was like a tapas bar with all the little small plates of food. And she had to go or she was going to lose her job. And I was like, all right, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to find the restaurant before anybody enters, so weeks before we're practicing this. Taught her how to get coherent, get into that space. She could feel it. She could feel the peace. She was like, okay, I've got my peace. Now go to the restaurant. Grab the door handle. Panic would ensue. Step back. Go walk back to the corner of the street. Get back in your heart. Go do it again. And we practiced this over and over and over. At the point that there was no panic, she opened the door, and then she panicked because she could smell the food. Come back to your heart. Stay, remain. Practice keeping your awareness here. Don't be aware of the handle. Don't be aware of the smells. Don't be aware of the noise inside the restaurant. Keep here. Eventually, she got to where she could walk inside and talk to the hostess. And then the day came when the party was going on. She had to go inside and sit at the table. And I think it was 3 or 4 times she had to go in and out. And she's like, I was like, who cares what they think at this point? If you lose your job, you're going to lose your job anyway. Like, who cares? So this is the greatest practice on earth. Go inside and sit down. Remain here. She said she sat down. They started bringing all this food. Her focus is just in her heart, and she's just watching, observing, but her focus is inside her heart. They put all these plates all over the table, and she was like, just watching. And then she saw her hand reach out and grab something towards her face. And she was like, and kind of in her head, she's like, no, in my heart. She gets back to her heart, and her head's wanting to panic, and her heart's like, you're fine. She put the food in her mouth, and she was like, oh my God. And I was like, what? And she goes, the flavor. She goes, you wouldn't believe what it tasted like. And I'm like, well, tell me, like, describe it. She went on and on. She goes, and the color of the food. That's why she was staring at everything while they were putting it down. She's like, I had no idea how beautiful this was. And then eating and watching everybody else eat, she was just like, oh my gosh, what was I doing? You got locked up in here in a program that told you, and wherever that came from, you get stuck. But once you get here, it is the practice of coming back here. If you fall out, come back. This will always remain the same. It will never change, and it will always be there.
I love that story. It's so reassuring to know that there's this place within you that you can always go to when you need to. Whenever.
Have you heard on your spiritual journey that it's all inside you? Everything you need to heal is inside you. Yeah.
I've heard indeed a few months ago, I always feel like when I hear things that seem to trigger me, I think, oh, I need to sit with this one for a while and I need to figure out why it's triggering me. And I think it was an interview with Marissa Peer about I'm good enough and saying that to yourself. And I think especially with my background, that really resonated. Like, how could I be good enough? And I sat with it. And yeah, I think that's also something that I'm still processing, I have to say, about everything I need is already within me. Everything that I will ever need is within me. And there's no need for outside things to validate me, but I have all the validation I need. It's a work in progress with me, I have to say.
Can I give you a few more things before we jump off? I find it so interesting. An easy way to get in tune with the I am enough idea is know the concept, I am enough, right? And you're at odds with it. You have a resistance to it. And she would take you through her hypnosis idea, right? Which is amazing. I would take it, put my hands over my heart, do my breathing, get inside my heart, get coherent, find that feeling of peace, let it grow, let it grow, let it grow. Do at least 3 minutes, if not a little bit longer. Really just let it totally take over your system. And then pull in, I am enough. So it's not here that's fighting with it. it's in your heart, and your heart's just going to go, yeah. And then that's going to trigger the response back up to the brain that says, oh, and it's going to start pulling apart that neuroplastic. You might have to do it a few times, but you can do it on your own totally just by taking the awareness of whatever the issue is, put it in your heart. I am enough. And you can even do it with negative things. Something that keeps showing up that, I hate myself was mine, always in the back of my head. I hate myself. I hate myself. And I didn't hear it anymore for the longest time. And it showed back up again after I started my spiritual journey. And I was like, what on earth is that? And I got in my heart, got my peace. I sat there for a minute. And then I took the words, I hate myself, and I put them inside my heart. And my heart ate it. My heart just, spirit grounded up. I was just like, so what I understood, what I was given information about was that your heart's a transducer. Mm-hmm. That space in your spirit essentially would be a transducer. So it changes the energy of feeling. It changes forms of energy. So if I go from a negative, I hate myself, I put it in my heart, people will typically tell me things like, it feels like it just got flushed. It feels like it just broke, like they'll tell me what they're seeing. It's breaking apart. It's gone. Like it just disappeared. And that's your spirit going on. We don't do that because we are peace and joy and love. It's higher level emotion. It can't exist in the same place.
Wow. Really, really powerful.
Yeah.
I'll definitely add this exercise every morning after I do my meditation.
Nice. I would do it before. You want to supercharge your meditation? Get in your heart first and then do your meditation. Because from this space, it alters everything, right? I'm no longer working from my head or what I think I have to do. I'm just remaining in my heart space. I go into my meditation, you'll find you can go way deeper.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. It's been absolutely different than what I expected, but I love that we got a chance to go into heart coherence, brain integration, and I always love hearing about new ways of, just finding peace, being at peace, and being better, because ultimately that's what we all love.
Yeah.
Christy, how can people connect with you?
Well, I've made it really tough. I don't have a website anymore, so please don't go looking for a website. My YouTube channel is still up. I'm getting strikes all the time lately, so hopefully they won't take me down because I just speak my mind about a lot of stuff. But on YouTube right now, you can find all this stuff. And I will leave, if you don't mind, I'll leave my Calendly link. If people want to contact me, they can either email me or they can just jump on and book a session on Calendly, and we can do some work. We can do whatever.
I didn't know I was dying, but I said, there's no air in here. There's no air in here. That's when I left my body. It caused me to shoot up in the air. I was flying straight up and I had a sense of Manhattan. When I got to the house, I had lost my body. All of us, my ancestors, had passed through this same doorway. I began to feel my ancestors as a presence just kind of around me to welcome me. People can't fly. Is this real? A voice answered me in my bones. It said, more real than anything back there. The sun got bigger and bigger, and I began to have a little bit of sense, am I going to vaporize? And I became aware of a being. The being was holding me as if I were an infant. The spirit said, you can't stay. You're not done yet. I took off and drove on these winding roads to my log cabin, 80 miles an hour. He was driving. It wasn't me. I couldn't even stand. I couldn't even see. At a certain point, you have to give free will. I was determined on self-destruction. Destroy yourself if you must. This is the last time I can help you. The purpose of our life is